First off, how did you get the idea for this story? Were you like inspired by a lot of the superhero films that were coming out, or was this something that just...
This was something that I wrote... Oh, Jesus, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I'm going to check this off. I wrote this probably... I wrote it 10 years ago in 2000. So, and the story for me was kind of based on like my experience from... Like, I grew up reading comic books, so I always love the genre, and I'm into like kind of like the darker, more serious stories like that Miller did with Daredevil. And like I liked that Daredevil was based kind of like in the real world in a way. Like all the other comic books, kind of like Daredevil had kind of his own thing, lived in Hell's Kitchen, and every once in a while he'd have a fight with a supervillain, but it was based in New York City and kind of felt real to me. So yeah, I think there's a lot of Daredevil in this for me. A lot of Miller kind of pushed me that way.
Cool. And so, this obviously is your first feature film.
Yes.
Can you talk about your experiences and challenges and shooting in your home neighborhood?
It was crazy. You think first thing is like I was doing some television and stuff, and I literally didn't know how do you start the scene? What's the process? Is it rolling, cut, action? What do I do? You see it in the movies, so I had to learn all that stuff, and it was really it was a great experience. I mean, I prepared really well for it, but still, it was. Once the ball started rolling, you have 28 days to finish the film. It was pretty crazy. And working in New York was great because you get to go home, sleep in your own bed, and I was familiar with everything. So I knew if I needed a shot of something, it's around the corner. I know what that is. So it was pretty cool.
Did it take a lot of planning?
John Scassi is the producer, and he's also from Brooklyn originally. He did all that. He thank God for him because he allowed me to paint. He always says I'll count the beans, you paint. So I didn't have to worry about all that. He kind of took that.
That's good because one of my questions was going to be because you were writer, director, and producer.
Right.
So did you ever have any problems in terms of conflicting interests, for the creative side versus the business side?
100%. And John's job was to kind of keep me in line. But there's things that I wanted, and then sometimes I had to say, look, man, I got the money for this. It's my responsibility. I'm going to do this. And it's, I do movies, and I do because I can't really. I kind of want to express myself, but I can't say it verbally. So you got to see it. So then I'm trying to explain to somebody what we're doing and why I'm doing it this so many times. And the producer's like, "Listen, you got it already." I'm like, "I don't have it yet. I didn't get what I need yet." And it's like, "We got to get out of here. We've been shooting for 16 hours." Yeah. So it did come to that every once in a while. We did all right. Though we stayed on budget. It was okay. Me and John had our fights, but we're all right.
They happen. What was your favorite part? Writer, director, producer. What was the best part for you?
I think
most enjoyable, maybe.
Most enjoyable was directing. I'd say I love the edit. I love being in the edit. I love seeing the finished product and putting it together. But I think being a writer is pretty cool because when you watch the movie, like everything they say, everything you see, I wrote down. I wrote it like guy walks into a car, gets in, drives away, and then on screen this guy walks in a car, drives in, drives away, and that is the weirdest thing because when I wrote stuff like there's a scene where Gary and Zulai they're detectives, and then he goes to the vending machine, puts in quarters, and pulls out chips. So I'm writing in year 2000. I'm like, Gary goes to the vending machine, pulls out chips. I needed something just to break up the dialogue. So I'm sitting there one day, and here comes this vending machine. I'm going, what is this? It's like, it's the vending machine from the script. It says right here, a vending machine. And I started to realize, like, that's what happens. You write it down, they read the script, and they break it out, and they bring it there.
Huh.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal.
It is kind of surreal, yeah. It is kind of surreal.
I never thought about it that way.
I'll tell you what, when I write my next script, I'm a little more careful as to what I write. I wrote all these chase scenes, and they were impossible to do, and people were really worried about them. Like, I'll just rewrite it. Yeah. But to them, it was like law, that's what I have to do. It's pretty interesting.
So what was it about Caleb that made you say he has to be our Wonder Boy?
Caleb was, if from the outside looking in, he's everything that I wasn't looking for. He was like skinny to the point of like he was 118 pounds, 120 pounds. He looked like a stick, And if you read the script, he's supposed to be this athletic kid who had all these, he could fight and martial arts. But when he came into the room, he fucking blew me away, man. He just blew me away in the audition. And what happened was, the kids I was seeing, they were just like 18-year-old, not dumb kids, but they had no life experience. And you could just see it in their eyes. Now, the kid, Sean Donovan, would have had he was an old soul. He saw horrible things. He led a horrible life to that age. Caleb grew up as a missionary. His parents, they took him around the world, and he was a Catholic missionary. He went and prayed for kids who were sick and dying all over in third world countries for most of his youth. He's seen death. He's seen this. So when I talked to him, it was like this kid. He felt like he was 50 years old. And he was homeschooled. He's a bit of a nerd, and that's who the kid would be. He wouldn't be a jock,
Right. How old is he? Or when he was making the film?
He was 20 years old when he made the film. Now he's 23. We've been at this for a bit.
Damn.
Yeah, I keep fighting it, so try to get it out there.
So let me see how I want to phrase this question. Or you know what were you hoping to achieve with this film? Because as I said, we were talking earlier, and I mentioned the kick-ass similarity and the whole vigilante thing, and that's what I compared it to right in the beginning. I was like, so this is gonna be a dark kick-ass, no humor in it whatsoever, pretty much, practically,
There's like a little humor in it.
And then that whole notion just kind of quickly evaporated once I got 20 minutes in.
Right.
So what was your overall goal with it? What was I know you were trying to make a point in terms of how does one control anger? Is it okay to seek out revenge this type of way? I don't know.
I think it's about really for me the film was always about perception. Like. It's like you watch this kid on, it's kind of like we watched Caleb on camera, right? And he goes out there, and everything he does, he's breaking the law right off the bat. He's going at the quote unquote bad guy, but he's being judge, jury the whole bit. And he, I take it to the guy in the train. You're like this. You start to like Sean Donovan. You're like, he's cool, man. This is what I want to do. And then he's on the train. This guy screams like, yeah, that guy's I've seen that guy before. And he gets on top of me, hits him. You're like, yeah, put him down. Then he's on top of him. This guy, you realize he's just some demented. He didn't touch anybody on the train. He was just screaming, and he was just like, stop, and he pounds him to death. And you're like, well, wait a second. Is that still my guy? Am I still on top of that? And like Zulai's character, she's supposed to be the hero, but everything she does in the movie is for herself. She loses her kid for her career. She doesn't tell her partner anything she's doing because she wants to recognition herself. And at the end of the day, she helps Sean kill the guy that's coming after her.
Yeah.
But you still kind of think of her as the hero in the movie. And it's that was kind of it for me. It's perception. It's how we see people, how we put these labels on them. Like beware the hero. It's like, is that kid really the hero? Who are we cheering for? And I wanted to make a movie that I wanted to see. To me, I wanted to make a movie that took the comic book genre pretty seriously and didn't mention it in it. Like to me, it's a comic book movie. But lots of people don't think so. A lot of people just think it's a vigilante film. But teach their own. It's not mine anymore.
So speaking of Zulai's character and the perception thing, because I personally was getting really annoyed with just the character. I was like, she's doing everything she shouldn't be doing, and it was bothering me. Like, just lay off, listen to the other detective, like, just do your job. And there were points definitely where her job was overlapping with her side investigation with Sean, which makes sense. My question is, at the end when she throws the gun in and she essentially becomes kind of a hero in your words, she becomes a hero because she gets rid of the gun and helps him, get rid of that child too. At that point, she kind of sacrifices all of her integrity for what she preaches in the entire movie. So, what are we supposed? What in your eyes, I guess? What should we perceive that as at the end? Is she going to resort now to this kind of unorthodox or more typical detective role versus the perfect one that she was originally?
Well, I mean, that's what I always say. I always say to people, people get that, and I'm like, I don't think she's a good person from the get-go when you meet her. You know what I mean? Like, what mother sacrifices her career for her kid? You can't get a kid out of custody. Lawyers not. Mother takes a kid. That's what happens in New York. Believe me, I was in that situation. She's, she doesn't really do. She's not sharing information. I think, truthfully, Zulai is always out for herself. And when she throws a gun, people are like, oh, that she's helping the kid. I'm like, really? Who is she helping? Because this guy's getting out of jail. She got screwed by this guy. Caleb officer said, listen, this is what I'm going to do. She's like, I'll do my part. Everybody sees it as like she feels bad for Sean. I don't think that's it. I think it's kind of like her way of saying, like, okay, like her way, like she messed up once with like losing her kid. She's like, okay, I'll do this, but it's also self-serving. So where does she go from here? I think she probably wouldn't be so self-serving anymore. I think she would probably become a regular detective now and not be so just for me. Yeah. I get that though. People watching like, what the fuck did she throw the gun for? She's a cop and she wanted to catch this kid. And I'm like, her motivation always to me is she's always out for Zula. She's always out for her the whole time. And that's the conversation in the bar. Gary's like, you have everything for being out for yourself. Your partner never got any recognition. Mm-hmm. Like, are you telling me everything? And she's like, yeah, I'm telling you everything. Why? And she's not. And why? Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, my thought was always that she wants that for herself. She catches the guy. I caught him. Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, when you talk about you should hate her off the get-go, I was like, I got so annoyed when she brought up the race card right when they first meet in the beginning. I was like, really? Like, that's what you're going to start off on? Like,
right.
You pulled that out? He's clearly not trying.
Right. And he's like, well, he's a total big. I think he pulled it out more. A Latino woman.
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
but
then she kept like pulling, nagging. It's like, it's not. I just didn't see him as trying purposely to do that.
Right.
I think it was definitely ignorance.
Yeah.
But then she kept going, and I was like,
I always seen Gary as an idiot. Though, like I thought him, he was trying to. I think he was trying to push her buttons. I always felt like that he was just that kind of guy to just. He's like, to me, like every cop I grew up with is racist.
Yeah,
and I don't mean they're not a racist.
They're
not a racist like to the point where like they're saying I'm going to kill black, but they would talk about other races in that manner, like it was no big deal, and they'd say I'm not a racist.
Right?
I think I'm a racist.
I could totally see that.
So.
And my dad works in the court system, so like
the things that come out of people's mouths, and you're like, Dad, you can't say that.
I know. I'm like,
but if you ask them straight out, you're like, are you a racist? She's like, no, call me. Come on.
Like I dated a black woman. It's like,
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. So, taking a different turn on it. So I really like your decision to use classical music.
Okay, thank you.
As his way of calming himself down. But for me, was it why did you have him keep listening to the classical music? It kind of seemed like a pain-pleasure kind of thing.
Right.
It would remind him constantly of the pain of his mother, but it also reminded him of the good times. So
see, I always think that to me, like, you said calm down, and that's like, I always thought it was the opposite for that. And I kind of...
Fire him up.
Yeah, I think that, so when everybody's kind of like, he's listening to classical music, he's a good kid, I'm like, where to everybody, to us, to maybe me and you, it's very calming. To him, it was like, this is what drives him. So when he's watching his mother get beat up by her father, and that the violins are in his head, and like that's kind of what drives him. I wanted to take that classical music and make it as violent as possible for him. So that's why it's Peace by Bach that's in it under there, and it's so uncomfortable when his mother's hitting the father. It gets so loud, and you're like, okay, I got it. It's the same chord over and over again. And Bach did this, and it was like to build tension. And I always thought it as the opposite for him. I always thought this was something he listened to make him.
Makes sense. I'd have to watch it again.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like, for me, people are going to watch the movie. Mm-hmm. One girl asked me, she's like, well, what was your message? I'm like, look, if you don't get one, then I didn't do it. So what's the point of me saying it? Like, you got to take away from the movie. It's like how you see it. It's kind of like, I talk about perception, how you see the film. People argue at the end about, was the father guilty, was he this and that? And I'm like, that's what I wanted. Because when I used to go to movies with my daughter, she's my biggest movie pal, so she's 20 now, all I want to do is have a cup of coffee and be able to talk about the movie. What do you think about this movie? Nowadays, there's a lot of movies you go and you're like, that was good for what it was.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it's it. It's like, I kind of like something to stay with you a little longer. I hope that's what happens with this film. I hope you can talk about it afterwards and discuss it and argue and say, why'd she throw the stupid gun?
Yeah. Actually, I do have a question about the whole father thing. So yeah, I got it. I don't even have to look. So when Sean sends the letter to Larry Childs, and he's reading it, which I thought that was an awesome way to get revenge. I was talking.
Did you see it coming?
I didn't see it coming at all.
That's great.
And I was talking to one of my friends who saw it in Dallas at the festival, and he sent the review in a while ago. I hadn't seen it, and I was like, yeah, it was an awesome ending. I was like, totally didn't see it coming. But do you think it's going to torment Sean more knowing that he just killed his father innocently when he was innocent, technically? Or?
Well, yeah, I think Sean, I kind of want it to be like,
or was Larry being nice? I don't know.
Or is Larry's a scumbag?
Yeah.
Or Larry going to cover his ass? And I don't think it would, for me, and I don't want to, people say, well, was he guilty? I was like, that's up to you. Think about it. But for me, if I'm watching the film, I think his father's innocent. Mm-hmm. I think everything Sean has done so far, we've kind of shown that he's fucked up in the head. And when I remember being a teenager thinking you know everything, and you don't know everything. And, it's memory. Like this guy could have been around the house all the time. Like he knew Larry, he hung out with these guys. This guy, you go open a book, I recognize this guy. There he is, you're 10 years old. Mm-hmm. That's the guy. You know, you don't. What do you know about mug shots? Did you see this guy? I'm like, I recognize him. So when he sees a red stamp, it's like, I think that Sean gets a wave of like, oh my God, like what did I do? And I think that's his new horror. He thought he got rid of it by getting rid of the memory of his mother getting killed. And now he's got that, and so I don't think Sean's going to live a very straight and narrow life for us, you know, going forward.
And there was one other part. So Sean starts taking steroids.
Yeah.
And so what was your decision to have him do that? Because I was watching the movie, and you had some of these like cuts where he was like, you know, kind of twitching and had those when his anger was kind of rising up.
Right. It's a very crazy.
Was he like getting all? Is he schizophrenic? Like,
I think that like what I was trying to get is like there's two worlds for Sean Donovan. Like, at the beginning, there's like no cuts. It's very boring. You know, you gotta. And I know it. And believe me, my producer hated it. And like the first 15 minutes of the movie is slow as shit. And it's supposed to say like kind of like this is the world this kid lives in every day. He's miserable. It's dark. There's no color. But he has this other identity, this other world, and that is a little chaotic for Sean. And I always said that the way Sean sees things, he's not the way things are. You know, like he sees the worst in everybody. So when he sees someone like that homeless guy on the train, it's amped up from what he's probably really doing. He's probably the same homeless guy talking on the train to himself, but in Sean's head, he's like, this guy's he's evil, he's bad. Yeah. So that's where the quick cuts come. It's supposed to be Sean's perspective.
Okay. Like when everyone yells at him.
Right, when everyone's yelling at him, and that's how he's seeing things. That's what he's...
Like when the father yells at him, but his father's not...
Right.
Was his father there? No, he was there. He was taking him out for his birthday, though.
Right. No, okay. When somebody gets home and he has the argument with the father's not there, he's having this argument with himself like he's in the shower.
Oh, okay.
Right, so like probably his father was probably like, hey, where were you? And Sean's having this argument with him that it's not even happening. He never speaks to his father.
Okay.
So...
That's where I wasn't sure if it was like a schizo thing. Like if that was erupted from him taking the steroids, which enhanced his anger, as an
probably
effect,
a little bit.
And then
I think for Sean he's been methodical. I think he took steroids because he knew he had to be stronger. You know, he couldn't go out there and do these things. He need to be. He knows his size. That's why he starts to look. He's practical. He's like, okay, I need maybe a nightstick, maybe brass knuckles, something to take these guys down. I'm too small, And I think that the makeup, the costume becomes something that he's like, okay, they're starting to recognize me. I need something to hide myself, And I think it was a little bit of fucking craziness. When I saw that on screen for the first time, I wrote that he puts this makeup on. I thought of it like kind of like being like, commando makeup or something that. But I was like, Caleb, just take it and like rake your face with it or something. And I'm watching on the monitor, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. He was like, wow. That was the best part of the film for me.
Yeah, his eyes like roll behind his head.
Yeah, and he comes down and he gets up and walks towards camera. I'm like, oh my god, that looks so cool. And then it was a really cool part for me.
Speaking of that scene, so there were a couple of points because throughout the whole movie, you said Caleb was very methodical.
Yeah,
for the most part. And there were a couple points where it kind of slipped, where, for example, he talks in Mandarin to the Chinese people.
Right.
And he does it on the train.
Right.
And I guess he instantly assumes that they speak Mandarin.
Right.
And
it was supposed to be like in the script. It's like, the train had to be filmed in 4 hours. So there's a lot of stuff missing in the train. But I get it right. Like you see Chinese people that speaks Mandarin. They could speak Cantonese or whatever. There's 1,000 different dialects of Chinese as well. But there is definitely a problem with that.
The only reason I was saying is because it's the only thing that the detective was able to link him.
Right.
One of the few things that she could do it with.
Right.
And I was like, well, if he was so methodical, like he probably could have avoided that. He kept using the same gun. So
right. Well, I think just like say like an 18-year-old kid, how do you get a gun?
Right.
Like especially a white kid in freaking Marine Park.
True.
I grew up there. It's like it's hard to do that.
All right.
And because I tried.
Yeah.
I couldn't get one. So I get you right. The idea is that he goes down this path where you meet him, and as he gets to be better at what he does, he's also becoming more of that character. You start losing, start crossing over a little bit, Yeah. So he's gonna start to slip a little bit. He starts to make mistakes, and it's the first person mentioned about the Chinese. That's right. How did he know?
The only reason I had mentioned is because it was the one thing, because I'm always like playing detective myself. Like I thought about becoming like cops or just doing investigation or forensics.
Right.
So I'm always like paying attention to this because for the most part he's got it down. I mean he's working in a station.
Right. So who's going to look at him? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's just got a perfect layout. I mean I was impressed. So that was good.
Cool. Thank you.
Let me see if I have anything else that I'm missing.
I'm glad you watched it. Like people, it's like when someone really watched it.